A surprise twist in the Tucson tragedy a year and a half later. The suspected shooter pleading guilty, even shedding a tear for the youngest victim. ABC 15 going in depth on what happens to Jared Loughner from here. We were the first to tell you about Loughner's change of heart on ABC15.com, and we've been live in Tucson ever since. ABC 15's Katie Rammel is joining us right now. Katie, he pleaded guilty to 19 counts, essentially owning up to the mass shooting, but he is avoiding the death penalty here. It has to be bittersweet for some of the people who've survived this.
Yeah, it sure is. And what's the real motive behind taking that plea deal? That's for Jared Loughner to know only. But everyone grieves and heals differently, so their response to this has been mixed. The victims, though, do describe themselves as becoming family since this tragedy. You could see that illustrated in the courtroom. I saw that today as they reached a hand out to one another. They passed tissues and comforted each other. It was very visible, their reaction as their names were read in the courtroom. And as you mentioned, 49 charges down to 19, and that's by design. They really wanted to represent every single victim on that day. Now, off camera, still inside the courthouse, I shared a few private moments with these victims where I talked to them, and in fact, Ron Barber's wife, one victim's wife, telling me this was much tougher than any of them expected. And outside, we want to share with you what some of them had to say.
When I read my husband's name, and Phyllis Schneck's daughter was sitting next to me, and I know how profoundly this has affected her and her family. It's a very difficult time for us.
My hope is that what happened today in this court can help all of us move forward and continue our healing process. I truly believe that justice was done today.
Today's events make me very proud to be an American. This was the system doing its best. It's not a perfect solution. The perfect solution is one that we can't have.
Back out here live, not everyone showed up at court today. Some people, as Brian Webb found out, decided to take part in this day in a different way.
One of them, Mavy's daughter, she
Yeah.
stayed at home today. She was shot and survived. Her husband was killed. I've gotten to know her a little bit over the past several months, and she really started to cry when I told her that a guilty...
She didn't know.
She didn't know at this point. Started to cry. There was a little bit of silence, and then she said, "Hallelujah, my prayers have been answered."
I'm just thrilled beyond words.
Mavy talked with me today in her living room in between all the phone calls she was getting. A bittersweet day for her, to be sure. Her husband, Dorwin, was killed, shielding her from the gunfire. They were married 15 years. Before they re-met, they were sixth grade sweethearts. The love of her life, she said. And after all she has been through, she wanted her husband's killer to get a second chance at life, not a sentence of death.
Because I wanted life in prison or life in an asylum. I did not want death. If he lives and takes his meds, maybe he'll find the Lord. And that's the most important thing in life.
And since the shooting, Mavy has gone to Washington several times,
Right.
lobbying for stricter gun laws. Katie, she'll be in Colorado next week to comfort and console the people who went through the shooting there. So really, she's found a second purpose in her life, too.
I've seen that, and you've gotten to know her very well over the past year and a half as well.
It's been great to get to know her, try to find some positive out of the negative, and that's what she's doing with her life.
Right, and how they've all grown from
Yes.
this. So thank you, Brian, so much. We want to take you to where this day started, really outside the courtroom, and show you some video of the first cars arriving here at the courthouse. Before this all started, the arrival of Jared Loughner, this was at about 9 this morning. The tinted windows delayed any chance of seeing him. Then inside the courtroom, let's take you upstairs. No cameras allowed, so we can show you these sketches. Jared showed up in a khaki jumpsuit with a buzz cut. His answers were very monotone. They were simple sentence responses. He was about 10 feet ahead of me, his family right behind me, looking distraught with a face of heartbreak. I really find it difficult to even describe to you. Now, most of the 2-hour proceedings focused on what happened inside this Missouri facility, and that's where he stayed over the last year and a half. A forensic psychologist spent nearly every day with him. She testified on the changes she saw, the acknowledgement, moving to self-centered remorse. She quoted him as saying, "I'm 23, and this is it. To remorse for others, and that's when she quoted him as saying, I hurt my mom, and I hurt my dad, I've hurt others. She said he also went on to say, I cry for that child. That child he's referring to is the youngest victim in this mass shooting, Christina Taylor Greene. They also, in the courtroom, went through the process there from medicating him to controlled interaction with a few other inmates, to a little bit of time outside, to giving him some jobs that they say he loved. And this was important because a lot of people find difficulty understanding it, but it was to bring him up to speed so that he could be restored to competency and make this plea. So with that, he was sworn in, and the victims were able to hear those 3 words that they had waited for this entire time: I plead guilty. Now, November 15th is the sentencing, and I spoke with many of the victims who say they will be showing up for that sentencing, Steve. And also, there was so much that happened today in the courtroom, and we want to let you know that you can find that, a much bigger discussion of what happened, on our homepage on abc15.com. It's right there on the front page.
Yeah, such a change in the way he has acted in the past in the courtroom. Thanks so much, Katie. Again, we're going to be covering that sentencing for you on November 15th. Life in prison, no possibility of parole. We're going to be at the courthouse for continuing coverage.